So this is sort of a different video for me. It's a lot more analytical and personal than my other videos, so I hope you enjoy it. Also, biased opinions and spoilers ahead for Celeste all the way up to the recently released Chapter 9, so go play Celeste before you watch this video, please. Good game. If you decided to stay without playing, or you have played it already, then it really makes no difference to me. I had wanted to play this game since I first heard about it in 2018. I finally got my chance to at the end of June this year when there was a huge sale on the Nintendo eShop, and I saw Celeste was 45% off. With gold points, I ended up snagging it for below half the original price, which is awesome. Recently, the final chapter of Celeste came out, and I want to break down why this chapter has amazing level design, story, and how it's a great farewell to the place known as Celeste Mountain. Celeste Chapter 9, Farewell. This is one of my favorite endings to a video game of all time. After reaching the top of the mountain a year and a half prior, Madeline finds out the news that Granny had died. Madeline's anxiety didn't let her go to her funeral, and she felt terrible about it. She wanted to see Granny one last time, and this is where the chapter starts out, on a very tranquil, grassy plain, with Granny standing there in the distance. As Madeline walked up to her, the sky and the ground changed to a world of death, with dead grass and a dark sky. Granny got replaced with a gravestone, which signifies that she died. Madeline starts crying about how she still needs her in her life. The other part of Madeline from the mountain's power pops out, and she mentions how Madeline didn't even attend the funeral. As this happens, a blue bird flies down on the gravestone, and you are prompted to follow it. As you're flying through the sky, part of Madeline pops out and asks Madeline where she is going. I think the bird is a part of Granny, just like how you're a part of me. And this is where the chapter truly begins. Throughout the chapter, you are constantly following this bird through the hardest string of challenges the game has to offer. After reaching a platform in space, Madeline and part of herself get into a fight, and Madeline tells the part of herself to go away while she rescues Granny. This in turn takes away your double dash that you've become accustomed to using during your time in chapters 7 and 8. Upon reaching the next screen, you are immediately faced with an old concept with a new twist. To get your double dash, you have to smash through a double dash crystal, which gives you 2 dashes. Throughout the game, you've seen regular dash crystals all over the place, so just by its design and its pink coloring, it's pretty obvious what it does by looking at it. Then, after a few screens of showing you what you can do with the double dash crystals, another concept is introduced. But this time, it's an entirely new concept, the explosive pufferfish. You can jump on its head to make it float down, but if you touch it below the line on its side, the pufferfish will explode and send you flying in the opposite direction. Also, if you press the opposite direction of the way you're hitting it at a specific time frame, you'll gain extra momentum and be sent further than normal, which is excellent for people who have mastered the game and are looking to complete it as fast as they can, such as speedrunners. In fact, a lot of screens in Farewell have a casual strategy and a speedrun strategy. The casual one being longer in length but less difficult, and the speedrun strategy being a shorter but extremely difficult way of completing a given screen, and may not be obvious until you see someone perform it. After some more screens of showing you how the pufferfish can be used to complete platforming, you come to a vertical section where yet another new tool is introduced. The parachute umbrella thing, I have no idea what its official name is. The parachute slows your fall and lets you glide along while holding it with ZL or ZR. These 3 new mechanics during this first section are mixed with previously existing concepts such as keys, the lifts from Forsaken City, and the dream blocks from Old Site, making quite a challenging introduction to this chapter. This first part is great because it tells you what to expect from the rest of the chapter and teaches you how different mechanics from any chapter can combine with these to make challenges you've never seen or done before in any previous chapter, making for a fresh experience even though you've been using a majority of these gimmicks throughout every other chapter. Now I want to explain how these level designs in the introduction section are a stroke of pure genius by the developers. If we scroll back to when the double dash crystals were introduced, the level design here is amazing. The double dash crystals are placed alongside the regular dash crystals that the player should be very familiar with at this point. The color of the double dash crystals is pink, which along with the regular dash crystals should bring up the connection that Madeline's hair turns pink when she has 2 dashes. To take it even further, analyzing the screen shows that 1 dash isn't enough to reach the double dash crystal. There are 2 regular dash crystals before the double dash crystal, but over here there is only 1. That signals that you need 2 dashes to reach this double dash crystal. so before even doing one attempt, you could know what the item does before you even interact with it, based solely on the way the level is laid out and the coloration of the level's assets. Let me show another less obvious example with the parachute. The game tells you how to grab and hold the parachute, but that's it. By jumping with it, you see that you fall slower and you can glide with it, but that's not all. A more advanced mechanic that is actually used later on in the chapter you can teach yourself right now. You may notice that there is a downwards path which you just glide down to, and an upwards path which you can't seemingly reach. This level design tactic shows the player that there may be more to the parachute than just gliding with it. When the player first picks up the parachute, they may just press ZL or ZR instead of holding it and accidentally throw it, teaching them that they can throw the parachute. What ability do we have that we could use to elevate ourselves in midair? Oh right, it's a little thing I like to call the dash. Players who try to use the dash while gliding realize that you cannot dash while gliding, but if you throw the parachute and dash into the parachute, you can gain a great amount of elevation and make it to the upper path, teaching the players a new skill without necessarily saying it in words. Just because this section encourages experimentation and curiosity, it can teach new skills. This situation I described here was exactly what I did when I first played through Chapter 9 and I learned how to do the throw dash momentum boost in this first room. Granted, to complete the upper path, you also need to know how to do a wave dash, no, not from Melee, which the game hasn't taught the player how to do yet. The level design can impact an introduction hugely for a player to understand its concepts as well as its item. Speaking of level design, after countless amounts of difficult platforming using the new mechanics as well as mixing them with some old, you come across a gray heart, which should be very familiar if you attempted to complete the B-side or C-side versions of each chapter. A red or yellow heart is the end objective of these altered, more difficult versions of each given chapter. Madeline collects the crystal heart and plays the animation with the name of the crystal heart like it does in every other chapter. Empty Space is the name of this crystal heart. After collecting it, you see the bird fly by and pass you, and Madeline realizes this isn't right, and this can't be the end, because the objective of catching the bird hasn't been fulfilled. The crystal heart shatters, and Madeline thinks that Granny is still out there, as represented by the bird flying past her, and you continue on. Now hold up, I want to draw attention back to the crystal heart, specifically the name of it, Empty Space. To me, the name Empty Space is representative of how Madeline feels when Granny died. By disappearing from Madeline's life, all that's left in her place is nothing. Emptiness. Empty space. The bird swooping in and breaking the silence is about how Madeline still believes Granny is still out there somewhere. She doesn't want to stop. She doesn't want to accept that she's gone. She is in denial. Just what the part of herself told her at the start of the chapter. You continue on, and as you make your way forward, the screen starts to glitch while you were chasing the bird from platform to platform. Then a giant bright blue barrier falls from the sky and blocks the path forward. In order to continue with the rest of the chapter, you need to collect a minimum of at least 15 crystal hearts, which you can get from collecting the hidden blue ones in each A side, and from completing the B sides up to Chapter 7, The Summit. The second half of Farewell is why I praise this chapter as one of the best endings to a game I've ever played. The reason the game blocks you is because the chapter spikes in difficulty from this point forward, and it wants to make sure you're prepared by having you complete almost all the B-sides first. The main reason I can see for this is because from this point forward, the game will expect you to know some advanced movement tech, which you learn how to do in the B-sides, Chapter 7's B-sides specifically. Once you collect 15 crystal hearts, the gate will open, and on the next screen is one of the best tutorials you could ever ask for, the Internet Cafe. Remember earlier when I said the upper path in the parachute room required a wave dash to complete? Well, this is actually where you learn how to perform a wave dash in the form of an amazing PowerPoint presentation called Wave Dashing in You. It's full of the greatest shade and form of comedy of 2019. Then, exiting the cafe, there is an outline of what you should be performing and how to do it. It is the perfect way to teach you how to wave dash. Once you perform it successfully, the devs give you an option to keep practicing here if so desired. Afterwards, the next screen makes sure you properly learn the technique that was taught at the end of the Summit's B-side, the wall bounce. All you have to do is dash near a wall and jump shortly after. The longer you wait to jump, the higher your wall bounce will be. These two sections are great because they get you to practice how to perform these techniques by showing you exactly how to do them and only asking you to replicate it. The final room here is just a mashup of both tech done one after another in midair. This is a great way to familiarize the player with the skills that they'll need to know how to do to complete the rest of the chapter. The game then starts throwing platforming challenge after platforming challenge at the player, asking you to complete the hardest selection of rooms the game has to offer, some even harder than the seaside. Farewell combines every mechanic, almost every piece of movement tech, and the mastery of the execution to make some of the most satisfying to complete challenges in the entire game. Words cannot honestly do justice how good it feels to finish a given room in this chapter. Some of the rooms took me more than an hour to get down, which is pretty crazy. The narrative continues with the part of Madeline helping her out, and she tells her that the situation is ridiculous. Madeline replies with, "All that matters is finding Granny. Then maybe I can bring her home, even if the whole universe is against me." Again, the themes of denial shine strongly. "Look, Madeline, we're in space chasing a mysterious bird. None of this is real. You're dreaming." So now we know that everything that has been happening here has been a dream. This was even hinted at near the beginning when part of Madeline said, "How are you even breathing up here?" But Madeline just completely ignored it. She's gone. It's time to wake up now. But if we wake up, we'll never see Granny again. This is the culmination of all the denial and sadness that Madeline has. Part of you tries to speak some sense into Madeline, but she doesn't listen. She doesn't want to accept that Granny is gone. So she is clinging on to the only thread she has left, chasing down the bird. Up ahead, there was another old mechanic, but with a new twist. The cassette blocks. At this point, you should already know what they do since you're required to have completed most of the B-sides. The version of the cassette blocks in Chapter 9 adds 2 new colors, yellow and green, on top of the blue and pink pre-existing cassette blocks. In this introductory room, they put the blocks in the order that they change so you can learn which order they are in and learn what color blocks will appear and disappear next. After this, the screens introduce spikes as well as springs on the cassette blocks, double dash crystals, red orbs, and more, which is another instance of how they combine previous mechanics to create an entirely new and unique challenge to the player. Finally, after all this, Madeline latches onto the bird and crashes them both into the ground. The bird gets up and flies away. As Madeline starts trying to continue chasing the bird, part of her pops up and says, "Madeline, stop!" Part of Madeline is trying to get her to move on, to move forward and start living again. Madeline, after hearing that it isn't easy to move on, that it isn't easy to live without someone you care about, that I know she's gone, and this is just a dream. Catching this bird won't bring her back. She's gone. That's the nature we all have to accept when somebody's time comes and passes. They won't come back, but you have to push forward, to keep on living for them. It's at this point that Madeline's goal has changed. She is no longer trying to catch the bird. She is trying to help the bird escape from her dream because it's trapped there. For Madeline, freeing that bird is the last stage that she needs to accept Granny's death, wake up, and move on with her life. At this point, Madeline, Badeline, and the bird are now working together to try to set the bird free. This is represented in the gameplay with them flinging you throughout this final section, along with all the gameplay mechanics that the game has taught you how to perform, execute, and master. It's up to you as the player to know how each mechanic, each item, and every movement tech interact with each other to make it to the end of each screen. This entire chapter thus far has been making sure you are 100% capable of doing every challenge the game can throw at you, even if it takes you hundreds and thousands of attempts. You must destroy these electrical hazard boxes to get rid of the electricity blocking the bird's progression. This part of the chapter is a combination of everything you have learned over your time with not just this chapter, but the entire game itself. After all of these extremely difficult platforming sections, you reach the final stretch. This is it, we're almost out of here. Let's do this, for Granny. This is one of the hardest and longest rooms in the entire game, and it has everything new in Chapter 9 in one extremely long gauntlet. If you fail a few times, part of you will pop out one last time and reassure you that you can do this, echoing the start of the game. This one section took me over an hour and a half to overcome. Granted, I'm fairly bad at the game. But this was the most challenging thing in this chapter, and I'm happy to say, I conquered the mountain. You reach this cloudy area with bright blue skies, and Granny walks up to Madeline. Madeline apologizes for not going to her funeral. Granny then makes some jokes about how would she care? She's dead. Thank you for looking out for me on the mountain. You've helped me so much, and I really miss you. Madeline finally goes into acceptance, and Granny disappears into thin air. Madeline wakes up and gets into a video call with none other than Theo. They catch up a bit, and it's revealed that Theo's grandfather, who also climbed Celeste Mountain, was very good friends with Granny, paralleling how Theo and Madeline also became good friends while climbing the mountain. All in all, I think Celeste Chapter 9 Farewell is an amazing, difficult, well-crafted ending to one of the best platformer collectathons of all time, and one of my favorite games of all time. Hopefully this gives some insight on why I love this game so much. The level design, the touching story of grief and loss, to the sheer difficulty of the platforming. All of it is amazing. If you watched this far, thank you so much for watching this whole mess of my thoughts. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new. I normally don't make serious analytical videos like this, but if you maybe want to see something like this again, let me know in the comments. And remember,